Dr. Jennifer Stankus. Life can't be exceptional unless you do exceptional things. From high school dropout to licensed attorney, to military magistrate, to emergency physician, Dr. Jen's path defies convention and embodies grit. Allow me to introduce Dr. Jenn properly. Jennifer Stankus, MD, JD, FACEP, board certified emergency physician, producer, military and law enforcement content, American Stories Entertainment, past chair, Emergency Medicine Foundation, licensed attorney and former military magistrate, courtroom expert witness, comprehensive medical legal consultants. Wow. This means Dr. Jenn is an ER doc, a lawyer, a military vet times two, former law enforcement, and reality TV star. Her background fuses combat-tested discipline, medical precision, and legal expertise into a life of service, leadership, and high-stakes decision-making. But it wasn't always clear she'd end up here. Dr. Jenn opens up about her early years, dropping out of high school at 16 and enlisting in the military at 17. That decision changed everything. From there, she cultivated a mindset forged in discipline and resilience, guiding her through the challenges of earning both an MD and a JD. Along the way, she became a voice of reason in chaos, whether in the ER, a courtroom, or on a survival show like Surviving Mann, with former guest and SEAL Team 6 operator, and the most dangerous man in the world that I know, Don Mann. At the heart of this episode is a powerful insight. Mental toughness often beats physical strength. Whether competing against elite operators on national television or advocating for preparedness and self-defense in daily life, Dr. Jenn illustrates that perseverance, mindset, and a refusal to quit are the ultimate force multipliers. Her journey reminds us that the most effective tool for survival on the street or in the ER is the mind. Now she's sharing those lessons through writing, media, and mentorship. Her upcoming book, Hard Target, blends practical self-defense wisdom with real-world urgency. And as a co-host on Surviving Mann and a producer of tactical media, she continues to mentor and inspire a wide audience, especially those who feel underestimated or overlooked. Whether you're in medicine, law, military service, or simply trying to grow stronger every day, Dr. Jenn offers a blueprint for resilience and reinvention, no matter where you start. Connect with Dr. Jenn on the show notes below. Click on those. Her link tree, click on that one, and on Instagram at Dr. Jenn. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator, subject matter expert, and the How Not to Die guy. And you're listening to my podcast, Straight Talk, Mind and Muscle. This episode is proudly sponsored by these guys, State and State for Women, because aging is inevitable, but how we age is a choice. State is the ultimate daily formula for optimal health and longevity, backed by clinically proven 100% natural ingredients that's designed to support hormone health, stress resilience, energy, and performance. And I use it every single day. And a special thanks also to my new sponsor, Michael Mason and the Mason Survival Protocol. Links to both of these are in the show notes below. Catch all my past episodes and resources in the notes as well. Thanks for watching. Now let's get into it. And we're live. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Welcome to my guest this morning, all the way from the States, Dr. Jennifer Stankus.
Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Gosh, I hope I got your name right.
You did. It's perfect.
Jennifer, you've got an amazing background, and I had to print it off, which is rare for me. I don't normally do it along an intro, but without doing this, I would not do you justice. And that's why I've got you on the show, because I'm quite stunned. So I'm just going to go through for the guests and the listeners. You're a board certified emergency physician, producer, military and law enforcement content, past chair, Emergency Medicine Foundation. But this is the bit that threw me. You're also a licensed attorney and former military magistrate, and also American Ninja Warrior Military Edition. There's a lot of things going on there. Yeah, a lawyer, a doctor, military. Gosh, what are you doing now? And then we might go back into your past.
Yeah, so right now I'm doing a bunch of survival military style shows with a company called American Stories Entertainment. And you met Don Mann, who is the host of the show Surviving Mann, and then a couple of spinoffs, Surviving Mann All Stars. And then I've come on as co-host. I started as just a contestant, and
Mm.
my 114-pound self did really well against former Rangers and others. And so they invited me back. I'm the only person to have competed in 3 seasons on one of the All-Stars, and then also to host another show called Surviving Mann Aftermath, which is kind of behind the scenes of the shows. But I have really wanted to transition over to co-host because while I love competing and it's hard for me to not compete, I really felt like it was important to transition into a role where I could be a role model and help to inspire other people to bring out the best in other people. And I've really enjoyed it. And then I'm also writing a book, which is straight up your alley on self-defense.
Oh,
And
wow.
and I'm also writing a screenplay with one of the directors at American Stories Entertainment. So I'm having a blast. I'm still active in emergency medicine part-time. I'm an expert witness. So I've got my hands in a lot of different pots, but I really like the mix. I'm as you can tell from my CV, I like to do lots of different things and have a variety of different experiences. And so that's where I am, and it's just a blast.
That's phenomenal, and I love I love your why. Wanting to inspire other people. Excuse me, because when you compete on the shows, uh, it's not so much selfish, but it's self-centered at least because you're trying to do your best, and then you can try and help other people. But you're only helping a small amount of people, maybe the one person that your arm around or whatever's going on. But at least with this, you're reaching out to a much bigger a range of people as well. And yes, absolutely. Thank you to Don. That's how I found you. And Don he's an amazing guest on the show. And Surviving Man just blew me away. I've watched a few of the episodes. Great. What inspired you to jump in as a contestant into Surviving Man?
So you got most of my background, but I'm also a former law enforcement officer. I actually dropped out of high school when I was 16, believe it or not. And this was back in the 80s. And uh, at the time, the Top Gun movie had just come out. And I really wanted to join the Navy and I really wanted a motorcycle. But I was
Great
in high
recruiting
school.
tool.
Right. So I went to the recruiter and he's like, well, that's nice, but you have to have a high school diploma. So I finished independent study. They said it would take me a year and a half. I said, no, it'll take me a month, and it did. And so I enlisted on my 17th birthday. And in the interim, I got involved with the Boulder County Sheriff's Department in Colorado. And as someone with a lot of time on my hands at the time and a huge interest in survival and military and tactics and that sort of thing, I did all sorts of training with the SWAT team and patrol. I dispatched, I did incident command, search and rescue, literally like 60 hours a week. I just totally threw myself into it.
Wow.
And so ever since then, I've been very interested in survival, especially as a little person. I'm not what you would expect. If you look at me, I'm all of 5'5", 114 pounds. But I like the element of surprise. But
Nice.
anyway,
I
um,
like that.
so the first season was actually filmed during COVID. So it was the spring of 2021. And that was a horrible time for me. I was a full-time ER doc. It was a really scary time. I had colleagues who were dying, and there wasn't a lot open and going on. And so I got a casting call from the facility where they filmed it. It used to be called Front Site. It was one of the largest training facilities in the country. It was then, I went bankrupt because of a Ponzi scheme, I think, but then it
Um,
was it was bought by Staccato, the owner of
yep.
Staccato. Then it became Staccato Ranch, which it is now. But the owner at the time of Front Sight had sent out a casting call and said, hey, if you are a weapons expert and you're interested in shooting and survival and you want to come on the show, go for it. And so I was very excited to do something fun. I couldn't believe that they would actually let me shoot guns, give me ammo. It's like, do you want me to pay for this? Because I will.
I
But
love it. I
anyway,
love it.
it was great. I was hoping that it would be kind of like Hell Week. That's what I was expecting. I was expecting to be there 24/7 and to really have a crazy experience that really tested your body and mind. And it ended up that they started with 32 contestants, which was great, but it was too many to really form a good cohesive team. And there were a lot of people who just weren't up to the task in
Yep.
terms of the physical challenges. But over time, that has changed and it continues to evolve. We typically now have 8 contestants, 8 to 12 at the most, but
Hmm.
more like 8, where the people really can come together as a team. We are choosing them so that they're able to do the really hardcore tasks. And for example, this last show that we did, we had Ken Shamrock come on, and
Oh,
he
wow.
taught hand-to-hand combat every morning.
Yeah.
And then they actually went to blows, like no, like they had pads on their hands, but no helmets, no pads on the ground, and they were going at it. And it's really become a much more real experience for people, which is why we're not getting as many applicants.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah. I can
I
see why.
I told the producer we're going to have to start recruiting from the jails or something.
Gosh, that's interesting. I've got a bit to unpack there. The f I'm going to go back to the survival military and tactics stuff you did as a kid, but I'd like to ask you why. Why did you want to challenge yourself? You said you were hoping it was going to be something like Hell Week. Now that's pretty hardcore. And yeah, Don is literally, I think Don Mann is one of the toughest humans I know. Have you read or heard his book?
Yes. Well, he has many books, but
Sorry,
yes.
the main one about his background and things. Uh, I hadn't heard it before interviewed him on the show, and I met him as he was a gentleman, a grandfather, and some more stories. But when you hear what he's actually done, my gosh, he is a tough man.
Yeah, and he and I are really best friends. And I think it's because we are very like-minded.
Mm.
And I think that they really the key to success in anything is mindset
Yep.
and just understanding what you are capable of and really tapping into that is really, I think, what makes Surviving Man so special. We take people, and if you told them what they were going to go through before they started, a lot of times they'd say, I can't do that, or I don't want to do that. And
Yep.
then it's really transformational to see them go through that experience and see what they are capable of, and then to move on from that. It's the analogy I would say is I'm sure where you are in the world, you've done, and plus what your background is, you've done some mountaineering, I'm sure,
Ah,
right?
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so you get to the parking lot and you look at the peak
Yeah.
that and you think, "Oh my goodness, that is daunting. That is so far away. There's so much effort between here and there." And most people will stay in the parking lot. They're like, "Oh, that's beautiful." But it's the people who, and I don't care if you run it, if you go light and fast and bivouac, or you make an expedition of it. If you start walking and you just don't stop, you just start walking, all of a sudden you're at the summit and you're like, holy mackerel, like this is amazing. And I use this as an analogy, but it's the people who actually get there and they see, wow, yeah, I just had to start moving. And then they're like, what's next? And it becomes easier and easier and easier to get there. And you just start accumulating all of these amazing experiences and skills and other things if you just keep moving
I'm hearing consistency. I'm translating that out of consistency and just keep moving forward.
and show up, be interested,
I like
just
that.
wanting to better yourself or others is really the key, and just being interested and showing up. It's funny, I when I was an officer in the Army, I started out enlisted in the Navy as a medic, and then I went on to become an Army officer as an attorney and a magistrate. And I had to go do something in the base hospital, and I got behind a 3-star general in line at the coffee stand, and he had like every special skill badge I'd ever seen and others that I couldn't identify. And I just laughed and I said, "Sir, I think you have every special skill badge there is." And he just laughed and he said, "Well, it's because I've been around a while and I always show up." And it just really resonated with me. No one gets to these incredible levels or has these incredible experiences all of a sudden. It's not like this heroic move. It's this just trudging along and finding beauty in the climb and in the moments, not focusing on the peak, but on the journey getting there.
Gosh, that's a good answer. And I haven't even asked the question, but you've set it up so beautifully. Thank you, Jen. About your why. And it's going to give me really good context to asking how you got from 17 to here as after a 16-year-old high school dropout. But my question now is even got more context is you've done all these things, all these successes and physical successes as well. What's driving you now to want to, and I know it wasn't, but you wanted to essentially do Hell Week. Why would you want to do that now in I'll say our, because I'm the same sort of genre, in our wiser years or our older years, perhaps?
What I have found is that I like I like testing my abilities, and I like being put into something that seems incredibly difficult
Yep.
and proving to myself that my mind is powerful enough to get through it.
Got it.
Because
That's the
it,
one. That's the one
it's
right there.
mind. It's because, it's funny. So in most of the physical challenges, I would win. And I'd win against rangers. I'd win against guys who were, 20 years old and top athletes, collegiate athletes, big muscular guys. And the reason why I would win was two reasons. One is that I knew that I could keep going until the last person quit. That's the only thing. I don't have to go forever. I just have to go until the last person quits. The other thing is that I know that the pain stops immediately when you stop. So if you quit, it's like it's over and it's done, but that lingering thought, I quit, could I have done more, will never go away. That it'll never go away. And so I would rather have the experience of knowing that I can beat anyone. I beat Lanny Barnes, an Olympian, a biathlete Olympian in the squat because I was not going to quit until she did. And, but it's the mind.
Yeah.
And I'm not super strong. I mean, I'm fit and muscular and lean and proportionally strong, but it's because I test myself over and over and over again. And I put myself in really difficult situations to prove to myself that I can do it and that I can overcome something that seems really incredibly awful and difficult. And it just gets easier and easier to do it. And
Yeah.
then the other reason why I beat these guys is I used psychological warfare. I look over at them and, like, with a smile on my face, show no pain or discomfort and just say, a 55-year-old woman is kicking your ass, right? And they
I,
drop.
I love that. I was going to ask when you said you've been in these ranges and so on. I was wondering how did they take it?
Not well, not well.
That's great. That's great. Look, you really nailed it there. The mind is so powerful. It has the ability to get us out of those situations. And I was just having a discussion with a friend the other day. I love that I can save my own life in situations. It may be daunting. It may seem like it's that huge mountain you've got to get over to survive, or it may seem time critical, or it may seem complex, but you just, excuse my French, get your shit together, get your mind
Yes.
together, and use the power of the mind to figure it out. And then your experiences of hardship, I haven't run for 4 years because of a fracture, a complex injury. But I know that if I had to, I can start putting one foot in front of the other. I'll just keep on going because you've been there with the experiences. So I love that you said the mind, and that's what people like Don, people like yourself, and people that have been through the backgrounds of us, our mind is stronger than our body, but our mind knows we can push the body to that limit. So that really answers my question. You're just testing your abilities. You're checking out, you're checking in where you're at by being able to do these things.
Yeah, and I would also say that I have always purposely chosen things that are difficult because I don't want to be someone who does something everyone else can do. I want my life to be exceptional, and your life can't be exceptional unless you do exceptional things. I want to squeeze every little bit of juice out of life that I can.
You and Don are the same. Gosh. I'm going to write that down, and that looks like that's the title for this show. Um, Now, I'll go to the self-defense book last. I'm intrigued, and we chatted offline before about Dr. Kirk Parsley. Kirk was a high school dropout at I think it was 16 as well. His high school teacher said to him, "You're going to amount to nothing." And of course, Kirk went on to enlist in the Navy, became a Navy SEAL, left the SEALs, went on, became a doctor, went back to the Navy as a doctor, and ended up as head of War Com, which is some kind of big thing over there in your huge world of USA military. But he did amount to something. He's one of the top doctors in the world now. A 16-year-old dropout, Jen, you said 17 years old, you do your high school, I guess, diploma in 1 month. Um, how? Why did you drop out? That's the first question. And that's a
So,
big thing.
you know, I was I was always a good kid. I never stole or lied or anything like that, but I was a bit of a rebel, and I had been in so many different schools. So I was in a private school. I always say I learned everything I needed to learn in first through fourth grade because I was in a Montessori school and I learned how to learn.
Oh, yes, yes.
I wasn't being taught to a test. I learned how to learn. And then my parents got divorced. My dad didn't want to pay for it. So I went to a different school. And then my mom had to move. So I went to a different school. And then it was time to change to a junior high school. So I went to a different school. Then we moved again. I went to a different school for 2 years. And then, went to a different school again. And I was just sick of it. I felt like I hated the social dynamics. I was actually a super, super introverted, shy person. I just want to go off on my own and go rock climbing or whatever. I hated going to school. And I didn't have the kind of the social connections that a lot of people do have in school and friends. And so I just finally I said that's enough. I got a car. I just wanted to work and have my life and have independence. I've always wanted to be independent. In fact, when my parents got divorced, I think I was 15 at the time. I told my dad, "Hey, Dad, give me the child support. I'm going to move to Mexico. I can live like a queen." And oddly enough, he said no.
Why were
But
you moving? Why were you guys moving so much, Jen?
we didn't have a lot of money.
Yep,
Uh, and so we were just constantly moving to
yep.
different towns, and it was a rough time.
And
And
then
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry to interrupt because you said you got so much stuff that you said there. At school, when you said you weren't quite forming those social connections and so on, I'm just thinking the way your brain's wired. Jordan Peterson says that males form their hierarchy and figure out where they are in their hierarchy by the physical threat of violence or actual violence. And then you find out where you're at. But females they don't do that much. They do it by backstabbing, gossip, and innuendo in those social cliques. Is that something that just you weren't having any of that?
Yeah, so I wouldn't have any of that. And the other thing was that, I grew up playing hockey. I was second in the world in BMX when I was 14.
Wow.
Uh, I went big on jumps. I was a downhill skier. I did all of these things that, A, most girls didn't want to do or wouldn't do, and B, couldn't keep up. So all my friends were male anyway,
Yeah.
with one exception. I had one very good friend who was female, but yeah, I hated it. And you can imagine that junior high and high school girls are the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
They're vicious. They're vicious.
It's amazing that Jordan Peterson managed to put that so succinctly. Backstabbing, gossip, and innuendo, forming your social hierarchy. But just what you said, your background, that's irrelevant to your world. It's irrelevant to making the jump. It's irrelevant to being the best in the world at BMXing and so on, because of what you're doing. So those formative years, gosh, that's clearly set you up for your success going on. Maybe then we can go to, you joined the military, awesome, but then becoming a lawyer from a high school dropout, and it's not from being not like Kirk. The teacher actually thought Kirk was thick as a plank of wood, but you went from a high school dropout to becoming a military lawyer. Is that correct?
Yeah, there were a few steps along the way, but I think one of the things that drove me, well, there were a couple of things. One was that, um, believe it or not, when I was a little kid, what I really wanted to do was make movies.
Oh
And so
wow,
I would write
here you
scripts.
are.
You're right, exactly. Finally, you know, 40 years later. But I had asked for a movie camera for my birthday when I was a kid, and I didn't get it, of course. But when my parents got divorced and we had really true food scarcity, and we went from living really well, my dad was a doctor, to living really not well.
Yeah,
Like our big night out once a month would be go to the movies, and if we could afford it, also go to fast food. I mean, it was really ridiculous.
yeah,
Which is so it was at that time that I became a BMX champion, because we didn't have money for me to have new bike parts and clothes and shoes. And so I started racing so that I had sponsors from Vans shoes,
yeah.
from bicycles. I had OP, Ocean Pacific clothing. I had all these things. And I learned, wow, if I work really, really hard and I'm the best at what I can do, I control what I get to do in my fate. No one else does.
Yeah.
And so I took the road of things that were safe for money. I mean, obviously, trying to make movies and things is, I can do it now because I make really good money and I can do that in my spare time. But that's a really risky way to go early.
Yeah.
And so I was actually in the Naval Reserve. So
Yeah.
I went to boot camp, came back, I did my weekend drills and my active duty time. But during that time, I got into mountain rescue. I was a ski patroller, and I worked as a law enforcement officer while I was going through school. So it actually took me quite a long time to get through school. But I always did things where I looked up to the people. I always kind of idolized like the police officers. I'm like, wow, they have such a cool job, and like I want to be that. And so I was that. And then learning the law and doing that sort of thing, I was like, wow, that's really cool. I want to be that. And like I idolize that. And then I get there, I'm like, oh, they're just people.
Yeah.
But by overcoming those feelings of, wow, that's a really cool person, that's better than me, that's what, like, I want to be that, and then getting there and realizing that people are just people, that it's just a job, but constantly going after that next challenge is what really drove me to do and experience so many things. And now I feel like I'm at a place where all of those things are coming together. As an expert witness, I was successful in defending 3 police officers against murder charges that were absolutely ridiculous, but every resource of the state was coming at them. And my opinion changed the outcome. I mean, it was really somehow all of my experiences have worked together, and just kind of bringing it full circle. This is how I want the rest of my life to go. I really want to use all of my experiences and mindset to teach people and to help them learn and grow through entertainment, really, because that's how people learn. If it's not entertaining, people don't really pay attention and they don't learn.
I'm learning that on Instagram. We've got to put out content that captures people's attention. But I was so lucky that yesterday morning I got a message from a woman in USA that something she said, a video you've seen has saved me. This happened and I did this. So it's important I do it. don't make much of it, but it is has to be entertaining. It can't be really super dry. Um,
But can I just get back to you for a second? I really
sure.
love that because that is the whole point of that's why I like you is that the whole point is to help people. And that one person, that one spending the time and effort to do something, to create something that helps another human being is gold. You may not make a lot of money from it, but that's gold.
It is, and that's why I keep doing it. Thank you for recognizing that. I interviewed the Sergeant Major of the New Zealand Army. He's a former troop sergeant from New Zealand SAS and went up the ranks. This is really for the listeners and viewers. But he's and in my day in the military, any sergeant major was big and gruff because you're little, and a high-ranking one is very tough and gruff man. Well, I knew Moo. He wasn't that. And he said his job is to help others. And I was quite stunned. I mean, what do you mean you're the sergeant major of the whole army? His job is to help others. And I realized, Jen, in all my jobs, military, police, fire, it's just about helping others. And maybe that's what kicks off in my head is that gets the reward center going. But I love doing it. Thank you for recognizing. And yeah, it is. I always say if we can help one person, we've done our job.
Absolutely. I think my first memory of helping something, it wasn't a person, it was an animal. But I was in sixth grade and my my poor mom. My mom had gone off to work and we lived in a really bad neighborhood. And one of our neighbors was a single mom with three kids. I was friends with them, and she had this live-in boyfriend who he was a bodybuilder, but he was like jacked up on steroids,
Oh,
and he was crazy and he was violent and he beat her up all the time and was the kids were afraid of him. And he stocked groceries at night and tried to sleep during the day. And there was this little dog in one of the
oh,
abutting yards. And he went out there and I knew he was going to kill the thing. And so I went running out there. I jumped over the fence. And you can imagine how little I am now. I'm in like sixth grade. And this huge monster is there. And I got between him and the dog. And I said, "You're not going to touch this dog." And he said, get out of my way. I'm going to kill that dog. And I said, in order for you to get to this dog, you're going to have to get to me and you're going to go to jail for a really long time. It's not worth it.
wow.
And, and he turned around and he left. And I was like, wow, I, I have power. Like I have power,
Yeah,
like not power in the weird sense, but like what I do matters
you're
kind of.
powerful.
Yes. Like how you interact with your world and people matters. And you can make a huge difference no matter who you are.
That's amazing, and I'm just hearing so much with your journey, those formative things that happened to you as a child, you experienced as a young person, which brings me back to what I wrote down. I'd like to touch on uh, now is you said at 16, 17, you're really into, I think is the words you said, survival, military, and tactics. What a rare thing for a young girl. You're a girl, I can say that, I think, at that time, a young girl to be into. So my question is why? I mean, I watched Rambo when I as a kid. I think I watched it in our lecture theatre at high school. Um, and now he's surviving. But why do you why did you have a bent on survival, military, and tactics?
Well, it's interesting. Maybe it was in part because of our situation going from a really nice neighborhood to a really dangerous, bad neighborhood and
Yeah.
having understand the environment you're in and stay safe. Maybe it was
Yep.
partly that. But then, as I was growing, my older brother, I have a brother and a sister, they're both older, but my brother is just the opposite of me. He was into drugs and stealing. He was always getting arrested and in fights. And he went crazy. And so first of all, I had to defend myself against him. He's 2.5
Oh,
years older.
oh,
But uh, but then I mean we're good friends now, but not at the time, that's for sure. but he was very anti-police, and all of his friends were anti-police, and so I started kind of parroting those things. But I've always been very introspective, and I live very purposefully, and I
Mm.
think purposefully. And I was like, why do I have that opinion? I don't know anything about the police. So at 16, I went on a ride along with the Boulder police,
Yep.
and I went with this guy. He was the best. He was so cool. And there were like foot pursuits. And I'm like, damn, this is cool. This is really crazy and fun.
Yep.
And so I got in with the sheriff's department, and I was just totally addicted. I couldn't get enough of it. And at the time in the 1980s, you may or may not remember this. I don't know when you were in law enforcement, but there were two Sentinel books that came out in the United States on training. One was called Street Survival, and the other one was called The Tactical Edge. And I studied those like it was, as part of what police officers were learning. And again, I wanted to be them. I wanted to be like them. And so I threw myself into studying those things. And the more I studied, the more fun it was. And, just I loved I loved foot pursuits, and being my size, I knew that I needed every advantage I could get. And so also at the time in the 80s, there was a guy named Koga, and he founded the Koga Institute. He was a Japanese officer from LA, and he taught all these arrest and control techniques. And I went to every
Right.
class I could,
Yep.
uh, because I needed that advantage. I'd rather not escalate the use of force, even though I can, given my size. I
Yeah.
didn't want to. I always wanted to, you know, I just wanted to be one of the guys, not one of the guys. I love being a woman, but I wanted to be viewed as a competent, good officer. And so I knew that my level of knowledge and my skills had to be as good or better.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Right along. And going back to your background with your brother and things again, gosh, you and Don must just talk and have so much synergies and synchronicities. Um, uh, my background in my young days, I was a, a bodybuilder in the gyms, um, and personal trainer, and I was actually international champion bodybuilder. But the gym is a weird thing. It's a niche population. It's a obviously very superficial. And a friend of mine there was a police officer, and used to do ride-alongs probably every 1 or 2 months, and it just brought me back to reality. And I remember the first time it brought me back to reality was when we went to a domestic, and you've gone in to a house and you see grown, oh, they're adults, but they're acting weird. These police officers are having to go in and sort these grown adults' lives out for them because a husband and wife or whoever they are, they've just lost the plot, and that brought me back to reality of what's really important. And the ride along and knowing what police actually go through and do can really ground you. And it sounds like that's what happened to you, Jen.
Absolutely. And also seeing how people live, it just blew my mind.
Yes.
It's interesting because the way every individual sees the world is through their own eyes, through their experiences, through their thought processes. No one sees the world the same way. And that's why I think traveling is really good, or putting yourself into situations that are unusual, or being around people who think differently from yourself is important, because it it grounds you. It shows you, we all need to get along. And I mean, that's the goal. It's not very easy these days, but in order to get along with people, you have to see the world through their eyes. And you can't do that unless you put yourself out there.
As it's easy said, it's so difficult to have done. But there's a former CIA officer, Andrew Bustamante, who speaks about that as well, perspective versus perception. And as soon as you try and understand something from somebody else's perspective, you're now no longer clashing. You're just seeing things that you can make informed decisions. Gosh, this is interesting background, and I don't think I've had someone with such a diverse background, and I can't do it justice. I was going to push on to the doctor side of things, But I think what I'll focus on is three more. You talked about yourself being an expert witness. Um, Expert witness in what subject, Jen?
So I started doing medical malpractice defense, but word got out about me. I did, I did one criminal case, and then word spread like wildfire because of my law enforcement background, military judge, lawyer, emergency physician. So I work as a medical expert, but I work typically in criminal cases. And it's funny. I'm very idealistic. I care about the individual, but I care much, much, much more about the integrity of the system.
Yep.
So people are like, well, how could you work on this case with this person who's just a real, not a good person? And the answer is because if you're going to take someone's civil liberties away from them, you better have proof.
Yep.
You have to prove your case. And I would rather have one person go free than another go to jail who didn't do something, or to even worse, be put to death on circumstantial evidence or something like that, and later be proven through DNA or whatever that they were innocent. I mean, I just can't even fathom that. And so I have really enjoyed my work. That the real pinnacle was with these officers. There are these three officers who were charged with murder and an in custody death. And the guy was had a toxic level of meth, and you could see that he died from a heart arrhythmia. The medics had the life pack information that showed exactly what was happening. The state lied. They tried to cover that up. It was unbelievable.
Can I
They
pause that? Because
Yeah.
that was the subject of that question. I hope it's not rude doing that. The state lied. That's what you just stated. You also stated beforehand you could see what happened medically. That's paraphrasing. Why would the state lie? And this, the crux of my question, we get into a bit of law and uh, questioning here is justice versus law. And you talked about the integrity of the system. Why would the state lie? And then also maybe take into account George Floyd as context,
That's why.
possibly. So
Well, that
why would the
is
state lie there, Jen, and not just
so.
find out the truth?
Well, these officers had been um, the event. Any in custody death is investigated,
Of course.
and the local jurisdiction had ruled that there was no wrongdoing, that the medical examiner had ruled that this was accidental death due to meth. And then George Floyd happened, and the
Right.
family was crazy. And they went back and they went to the state and wanted it to be looked at again. The state police, then it got kicked up. The state police investigated. They said there's no wrongdoing.
Right.
And then um, for political reasons, the governor of the state decided that they were going to go after these officers.
Wow.
And the medical examiner came back a year later, changed his answer to homicide, and then went to work as a paid consultant for them. He
So
was
that was
in
my next. I'm so sorry. I normally let when you interrogate someone, you're supposed to let them do the whole free flow. But that's an important point. I was about to say, why did he change? And then you said he got paid. So are you saying that money was the influencer there for somebody to lie?
money in politics. George Floyd was a huge thing,
Yeah.
and uh, it was just unbelievable what happened. One of the other things that happened was this medical examiner was in the interviews with like the paramedics, trying to change their answers or influence their answers. He was listed as unidentified male in the transcripts. It was just the whole thing was unbelievable. And the bottom line is that the officers were acquitted, which is great, but their lives were ruined.
Yes.
They were ruined. They will never be law enforcement officers again. They had to move. The amount of stress on the individual and their family was just unbelievable.
Yep.
the morale in the police force was so bad afterward, maybe about half the officers quit. It
Wow.
was terrible.
Wow. So, a justice system versus a law system, you helped win that case. I would suggest it's probably crucial what your actions. But then, if there was true justice, then would the liars and the people that did that wrong, were they investigated afterwards?
Well, that's a good question. It depends on who's in power.
Yeah,
The current Attorney General Bondi is going after rogue prosecutors
yeah.
and suing for malicious prosecution. So it depends on who's in power and who decides that there's been wrongdoing, and that's just the nature of it.
It's disheartening, but
Yes.
it is the system, and it's beautiful that you're trying to preserve the integrity of the system. I'm going to ask you another question, related somewhat, and Kirk Parsley, Dr. Kirk Parsley, um, when I spoke to him on one of the shows, it was in the middle of COVID, and he's a very educated man. He couldn't discriminate. He said half of the information is saying X about COVID, and half of the information is saying D about COVID, and they're completely opposite. You started at somebody at the start of the show. You said you had friends die, and I'm assuming from COVID, and that's horrid. It is a disease. Um, you're saying probably killed them, but you've gone on to become a doctor. You're very logical and discriminatory, and you filmed in the middle of COVID at the start. I think 2021. You said now with the information that's come out, and at the time, what were you thinking there? Was going on? What were you thinking as an ER doctor, somebody who actually literally saves people's lives? What were you thinking was right and wrong there?
Well, I knew that the information that was being put out wasn't right. So, and I knew that the information being put out was intentionally being put out in a way to manipulate people.
Why?
And
How, and why did you know that? And that's
as,
amazing. That's important.
just as an example, they said that you don't need an N95. You just need a cloth mask. Why would they do that? Because we couldn't get N95s. There was a supply chain problem.
Yeah,
We would go for a week at a time wearing the same N95. I mean, it's totally unsafe.
yeah,
But that's why, in my opinion, that's why they told people that. It makes absolutely zero sense to have a virus which is airborne and stays in the air for that long, that you wouldn't need an N95 and goggles. And like, why would you tell people that? The only reason why you could tell people that with it would be because you're worried about the supply chain for the healthcare workers, which
yeah.
is what I believe happened. And then, that later they said, yeah, this is what you need, and it changed. But everyone in my field knew that that wasn't true.
Wow, wow. It's crazy. I think a lot of people are trying to sort of not whitewash, but trying to forget that that happened. But the fact that the government can lie to you, or and we're not saying just your government, it was literally around the world, can lie to the people and tell them these things. But we do believe them. And let me give you an example. You wore the same N95 mask for a week. You just said, well, you said we. Um, you wouldn't do that if you literally knew on the other side of this there was a vapor that was going to hurt. You wouldn't be wearing that at all after day one. So why would an educated person still um, kowtow to these rules?
Well, it wasn't kowtowing. It was that we didn't have any masks.
Right.
We couldn't get them. And so we had to ration them because there were no more coming.
I see.
And so that was why. But a lot of it was funny. One of the things that you talked with your doctor friend about on a previous
Kirk, yeah.
podcast was how medicine changes. What we believe to be true changes.
Mm,
It's not that it's a lie all the time. So, as an example, we intubated people very early because they were coming in with ridiculously low oxygen saturations, like
Yeah.
in the 50s or 60s,
Yeah.
and we're like, that is not compatible with life. And we would, intubate them, and that put everyone at risk for getting the disease. And it was terrible. And then we learned, well, if we actually prone them and do other things, they do better. But
Yeah.
you don't learn those things until you've lived through it. And unfortunately, uh, people are the experiment in real time,
Yeah.
and you're doing the best that you can with the knowledge that you have, but it changes.
Yeah, of course, and that's the whole point of science, that it changes rather than being, set. And as they said, trust the science. I was just very interested in your view as a logical and educated professional in that, the information around it, particularly with RFK Jr. just stating 24 hours ago that it was literally came from the Wuhan lab, and they've just stopped all the bioweapons research that the Patriot Act allowed. He said that hasn't helped any humans since then. So that was quite stunning that came out yesterday.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's almost like any environmental thing that you decide to do. It's only as good as what the world adopts. So, like if terrorist nations decide that they're going to continue to do this type of research to weaponize illness, they're going to keep doing it. But I agree. I don't want my tax dollars going towards that. And to me, it's just you're creating a monster that it's only a matter of time before it gets out of the lab. Um,
Yeah.
as we have seen, and even worse, what if some, crazy dictator decides that they don't care, they're gonna, unleash this on the world? That's just really scary.
My job in the special forces was counterterrorism and hostage rescue, and um, did little known fact, the sarin or ricin, the one that happened in the Japanese subway. I think it was it ricin, Jen?
I think it was ricin, but I don't remember.
Yeah. So we had obviously learned about that in the squadron there. But when I became a Western Australian police officer, found out that in the middle of Western Australia, like it's the middle of Texas, it's a huge place, um, there were some country cop found 4 dead sheep. They practiced on them here in Western Australia, got it right, and then they took it to Japan.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
That
so when you say people can unleash that, it can happen anywhere, and it can just be that one bad person or group of people. Yeah.
Exactly. But with that said, I agree that we shouldn't engage in it.
Well, not with the dual research. Absolutely. Hey, I want defense to do all the defensive stuff. Absolutely, please. But the dual research is probably not on. But maybe we could tangent now to self defense. It's kind of culminating where you started, having to, you had a bigger, badder, older brother. You had to learn how to do better than the bad guy in police and use more skill. And and now you're writing a book. I mean, you've got a lot on your plate, 2 books. What's the self-defense book? Where does that come about? What's the start of that, and what's it going to be about?
Yeah, so the purpose of this is to empower people. Um, Things were
Beautiful.
getting really out of hand in our cities with the lack of prosecutions and the rampant crime, and people were and are scared. They're afraid to go about their lives. And so the purpose of the book is to empower people
Beautiful.
and to teach them, because we're all animals. We have instincts. Like, it innate in us is the ability to survive. It's getting that out. We have all of the abilities, but we have unlearned them through the way we've been socialized, the way we go about our days, the way our brain compartmentalizes things. So the book is going to be really an explanation of what to do, why we do what we do, and practical exercises to rewire your brain to be safe, because it should be second nature. The animal out on the savannah isn't thinking, oh, the grass is moving a different way than the rest of the grasses, there must be a predator there. Their brain registers some danger, something that's out of place, some pattern that is wrong, and their brain recognizes that and says, move away from that. And that's what they do. And trying to get people to instinctually, or as second nature, learn how to navigate their environment in a safe way, and in a way that avoids confrontation and violence.
Yep.
And one of the biggest problems is like the ego. Someone cuts you off, you
I
flip
say
them
this all
off.
the time.
It's
Ego will
so
get you
stupid.
killed.
Yeah, it will. It's like, are you really going to convince the jerk who cut you off not to cut people off again? Like by getting right on their butt and like flipping them off, and having your own cortisol like go through the roof. It's stupid. It's
It is.
stupid.
It's not your place, and you're still inside your middle box, and just be somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that as a police officer, and then going through and doing my psych rotation as a medical student in the VA, and hearing stories about these road rage things and seeing it, and like what will prompt someone to pull out a gun on you, or to assault you. It doesn't take much. I mean, there something like 20% of the population has a serious mental health issue, and I don't want to trigger them. I don't think it's a good idea. I like my life, I like my health.
It's
uh,
clever.
but the last part of the book is, okay, you've tried to avoid the violence, but it's come to you, it's on your door. What next?
Yeah.
And one of my favorite books, and you talked about this on one of your prior podcasts with the French guy. I
Oh,
loved it.
he wasn't he great? Vol West.
Yeah, Ball. But you guys talked about the book Violence of Mind. And
We're going to come back to violence of mind. So carry on, and I've got a note there.
okay, but anyway, the point is that, again, you have to harness that, what is innate in you, and that is, you're not polite, there are no freaking rules. Someone is trying to hurt you, you need to strike with the most ferocious, violent, horrible, maiming thing that you can do. You need to stop the fight immediately, or you're in deep trouble. And you see it all the time in these fights. It's like, what are you doing? Stop the threat.
Yeah,
Just stop the threat now. Like, that's what you need to do. And there are lots of options on how to do that. Obviously, a lot of people here conceal carry. I don't think that's a great, because the other side of it is the legal side, and
exactly.
making sure people understand the rules of use of force. And in fact, I'm starting today getting my force science analyst certification, but just because it's fun and interesting. But the point is that most of the book is about training yourself to recognize what is dangerous
Of
and
course.
avoid it. But the second part is going to be, if it comes, you need to do your business and be done with it.
Let me get a little resource. I'll just ask my boy to get me a book. Seb, would you please get the book that the bodyguard sent us from inside that box and just pass it to me? Yes, it's in there. Um,
He's a
now,
very nice helper.
it's great because he gets to meet the guests and chat to them. You talked about innate all the time, and you talked about rewilding. Thank you. You talked about thank you. You talked about rewiring the brain. I interviewed Nick Goldsmith, the former Royal Marine, and he wrote a book called Rewild Your Mind. And it wasn't about self-defense, it was getting back into that nature. That sounds airy fairy. You've used the word innate. That sounds a bit more realistic. But we have these things in our DNA. And I had a Delta Force commander, Pete Blaber, on, and I've just finished his book. And literally, when you spoke about the deer, It's not a learned behavior. It's in the DNA, in the amygdala. It's passed on. And just the other day, I heard it, and I've got to try it. I've got to find a cat. If you put a cucumber down beside a cat and it hasn't seen it, it turns around, it'll flip out because in their DNA, it's a snake.
I
Uh,
flip out. Like
oh,
I'll running along a trail and I'll see a stick that looks like a snake and I'm like, ah.
yeah.
So,
So it is innate, as you said, but literally from my crayon brain, it's in the DNA, and unfortunately, it has been trained out of us, like you said. And then I've got this book that Seb just got for me by Sean Gallagher, bodyguard of 30 years, bodyguard to one of the richest people in the world, and I mean the stars that he his client led him out to, and it's called Navigating the Modern Jungle. And again, the same thing, rewilding your mind from Nick Goldsmith. That's about mental health. Navigating the modern jungle, same thing with yours as well. But
well,
then we,
do you want to know what's really interesting? Is what's crazy is the most dangerous place is a city, obviously, and
yes,
a city. But what's interesting is that because of all of the noise and all of the danger, people's minds actually become numb to seeing the danger. They're worse.
yes,
You get someone from the country who comes into the city, they spot things right away,
yeah,
immediately. The car that's come by twice or three times, they spot it. The city person doesn't. And they actually have to actively retrain their mind and constantly be scanning their environment. And at first it's work, but then it becomes second nature. It's like learning how to shoot a firearm. It's like, I don't you or I would never stand static in front of a target. We're running. We're
yeah.
running, we're moving because that's how you would fight. But when you're first learning, it's not like that. And it's the same thing with awareness and changing your brain. It just takes a while.
And very good that you said scanning and so on there. I wanted to reemphasize the point for the guests, for the listeners and the viewers. Um, I'm highly trained, but I don't walk around on high alert. I just scan and go, weirdo, weirdo, good, 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 and then just clock it and then move on. And then if something changes, sure, but you don't walk around in a sense of hyper alertness, hyper vigilance. That's not what Jen and I are talking about. If you're listening to this, it's just being aware and then rating it and then carrying on with things. You know, you've gone into a restaurant and there's a couple having a bit of a fight, and you're okay. Well, that's a bit weird. I hope it doesn't go too bad, but you're not staring them down and wanting to jump in. So it's just being alert, being educated, and then having possible options that books like yours, Jen, and everybody else's will be able to give them. But Vaj Freeborn's book that you said, Violence of Mind, I urge anybody that's listening to this to read it. I listened to the book on the audio book. Um, Self-defense, he committed an act in self-defense, and he was rightful in doing so, I believe, in the context of what he said the case was, and he went to jail. It's no good defending yourself. And I just said this in a reel the other day. If you end up in jail, because if you're in jail, you're going to lose your money, you're going to lose your family, you might lose your wife, your kids, if somebody else is raising them, other way around, husband, same thing. But going to jail for self-defense, that's not a good option either. So you got to be pretty clever about that.
Yeah, so the point with him is that it was the number he was justified, but it was the number of times that he stabbed the guy.
Yep.
And it's the same thing with a firearm. If someone breaks into your house and you unload 30 rounds into that person, that will be deemed unreasonable. And like, what were you thinking? You're out of control. The goal is to stop the threat.
Yes.
That's it. It's not your goal is not to kill someone. It's not to unload, every round in the magazine that you have. It's to stop the threat. And the other point of the book is teaching people how to inoculate their brain.
Yes.
You have to think. If you're not thinking, or if you freeze, you're dead
You
in the water. Like
you
80.
will dump the mag. You will dump the mag. Exactly. You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, you will. You have to have gone through this enough times to where your brain is inoculated. And one of the things that's really interesting that I talk about in the book is visualization. The brain does not know the difference between visualizing and what's real. They've done a lot of studies where like you're a skier and you're visualizing every turn and every like bump and the muscles actually fire. They don't fire
Wow.
at the level that you can detect, but you can with EMG. So your brain, when they say that muscle memory, you're actually creating muscle memory when you're doing this. There's a famous story of a POW who was 7 years, who went through his city golf course and played 18 rounds. He
Yep.
visualized it, the smells, the sounds, how he held the club, which club he would use, where the ball went. And at the end of that 7 years, he was so deconditioned and in such poor shape that he could barely walk with canes, but he walked the city course in a tournament and shot a park the very first time he was out.
He
And it
did.
was because he had been golfing. And again, it's so matrix like, but the body doesn't know the the difference. So if you can truly visualize and go through scenarios and scenario training and to feel the fear and put yourself in there, you really can learn to inoculate your brain because you can't train for every scenario. It's impossible. You have no idea what will happen, and you have to constantly change it in your mind. Not just like, oh, I told him to stop, he stops. Well, no, he doesn't. He stops, he walks, but now he's coming around the building the other way. And is there another person here? Like it's just constantly in your mind, having the ability to be adaptable because you have to be creative when these things happen because they haven't happened before. You have to think through them and you have to be resilient. And you have to have the mindset to say, I'm going to survive, not that person. If it
Yep.
comes down between a bad person and me, I'm going to survive. Sorry, I'm on a roll here, but
Yeah.
like one of the other things that's really interesting is when they interview a lot of women say, oh, no, I couldn't do that. I couldn't gouge their eyes out or I couldn't shoot them. And then they ask them, well, what if the person was going after your kid? Oh, I'd kill him. It's like, well, is your life really not worth the same amount as this bad person who you'd kill to protect your kid? That
Yeah.
makes zero sense to me. And so getting people in the mindset of, your life is worth everything. And if someone is trying to take it or hurt you, you should not hold back. And there are no rules. You should like fight with everything you have.
Yeah, it's so true. It is mindset. I've come to the realization after teaching for 24 years now that it's the ability to switch on that kill or be killed. And that was where what I teach started with William Fairbairn in World War II with the Special Forces SOE there. It's mindset. Um, Dave
I just
Grossman.
bought books, by the way.
I'm sorry?
I bought the World War II combatives books. I
Yes.
haven't go through them yet, but I'm very interested in that.
Oh, very good. And look, it doesn't change. Let's be real. Emergency medicine hasn't changed. Can they breathe? Is their heart beating? And is their blood intact in the hoses? That hasn't changed. Um, how a woman like you, your size, Nancy Wake, a 27-year-old socialite from New Zealand and behind enemy lines in France, how she can kill a Nazi with her bare hand and chop him at the bottom of the occiput there and kill him, that hasn't changed. It's still the same in 2025. I'm tanging slightly. Hopefully I'll pick up where I was supposed to go there.
But I hope.
Mindset is important. However, as Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, who has some good information in his books, and as Andy Stumpf and I soon realised, is also incredibly lying in some of them. He did state that a human being won't naturally kill a or seriously maim another human being unless they've been use the word inoculated, unless they've been exposed. And what I've had in my classes, my in-person classes, Jen, is I do a little eye gouge drill. We'll make it fun. Okay, you're gonna get in a hug, and then you're just gonna push the eyeballs until the person lets go. And I give a demonstration and the person lets go straight away. And then you get the girls do it on me or on each other. And I say, okay, don't give me a facial, don't give me a nose job, don't give me a little eyebrow tint. They just will not hit the eyeballs for about a good minute, no matter how much they want to. And the look on their faces is a look of pure horror. But after that, Jen, after that, they do get the eyeballs and they haven't hurt anybody. Boom, they are good to go. They just don't hold back. So it's the inoculation. You're so right. That's what self-defense is, that you can actually use, is when you have practiced it somewhat on a human to that degree.
Yeah, and I think, the getting back to the whole purpose of the book being empowerment is just getting people to feel like I do know what to do. I can take care of myself. There are situations that will happen that you get into real trouble. Hopefully you don't. You recognize it first, but just having the confidence to know most people have no clue what to do, none,
You're right.
zero.
You're right.
And it's scary. I can only imagine how scary that would be. The number of people who have anxiety and are afraid to go out of the house or to drive or whatever, I believe that it's rooted in this notion that they have gotten so far from their natural ability to survive that they know in the back of their mind that it's dangerous, but they have no idea how to deal with it. And that's very anxiety producing.
There's a great quote from my Master Chief Instructor, and that sounds a bit weird, but that is his actual rank in Special Forces Combatives. Trained New Zealand SAS for 19 years. Knowledge dispels fear.
Yes,
And if we can
absolutely.
give a file to someone, this lady that messaged me yesterday, she watched a video of me saying, "Don't look at someone in the eyes. Look at their waist, because then you see their hands, their feet, and weapons, and you haven't aggravated them." And that was a file she had that she didn't have before. It's just a file, and then you can access it, like you said, to the adapting situations. So that's what we're trying to do. And I love the idea that you got a book out. I love that it's from a female's point of view, but not just female's point of view. So experienced through all your genres. I'm looking forward to seeing it come out.
Excellent. Well, I really do believe that it will be one of the most important things that I do in my life. I really do
Wow.
believe that it will, if it saved or helped people avoid some really bad experience, even 100 people, that would be so incredibly meaningful.
That's such a big thing and such a humble thing. Again, you've got such a synergy. I didn't say it before, I said with Don, but with Special Forces mentality, that's such a humble thing that after I've got a list here that your your titles and qualifications, they're stunning. I haven't had many guests with that many. For you to say that writing this book at the end of all that, well, nowhere near the end, I don't know what chapter of your life you're in, but that's going to be the most important thing. That's a big thing. So you're kudos to you, Jen. Your humility and your drive and your why is very helpful. I'm so glad I've got you on the show. Um, we've got to wrap it up pretty soon, otherwise I'll have to get into a part two. Um, your book, when does that come out? And then more importantly, where can people just find out more about you and what you do? What's the best places?
So the best way to follow all of my um, antics, I would say, would be Linktree. So it's Dr. Jenn. So it's Dr. _Jenn, Jenn, and that's at Linktree. And that'll hook you into my IMDb page and all of the TV and film projects I'm doing, the Instagram, American Stories, and uh, just there's another article that's a really good article on my background in muscle and fitness on Fit to Serve, which is on there.
I did
Uh,
do a little bit of research. I don't do much on a guest because I want to get them to know them during the show, but I did see that and it was brilliant.
it was that was I was really honored because that one was because of my military and law enforcement service, and so I was proud. And believe it or not, being fit to serve is a real national emergency here. So many young people are not fit, but and they're not even eligible for military service because they're so out of shape. even at a young age. But anyway, I'm very honored to be here. I'm a big fan. That I really am very humbled that I am included among your amazing guests, and so I really appreciate it. And hopefully we can get the word out on the book. It's called Hard Target. It should come out this fall, and I'll obviously, put lots out there on my social media announcing it.
Beautiful, hard target. We'll, as usual, all the links for that you spoke about there with your link tree and so on will be in the show notes, narrated show notes at the start. We'll put some trailers out about the book, of course. And look, I'd like to invite you back on for a sequel because you got so much to dig into. I haven't done it justice at all. Hopefully, I've done a little bit of justice to some of your story, and it's a real honor. It's been a real pleasure.
I would love to come back anytime.
Thank you, Jenn. Thank you so much. Looking forward to it, and I'm going to be over in the States very soon. So if we get the chance to be in the same place, I'd love to connect.
That would be wonderful, for sure.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you so much. I'll hit pause. We have a quick chat. Hi. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator and former Australian police officer, and your podcast host. Please check out my new project at hownottodieguy.com, where I teach everything you need to know to both males and females, at-risk populations, schools, kids, and the elderly for self-defense, situational awareness, and all-round skills that every good person should know. Thanks for watching.